Hello. I recently finished reading a book which is so unique that I don't even know entirely how to classify it. It's Under the Eye of the Big Bird by Hiromi Kawakami, and it's translated by Asa Yoneda. And I don't think it's quite right to classify this as a novel, or at least what readers have come to expect from novels in terms of plot or the following the trajectory of a character or characters. But I also don't think it's quite right to call it a book of short stories either. I would more characterize this as islands of experience which are separated by time and space. Although I don't expect to see that as a category in bookshops anytime soon, under which books can be shelved. Although there are other books which I think are kind of comparable to this in a way. There's How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu, or there is The Employees by Olga, Ravn. These are books that are much more concerned with where the human race is going over a long span of time, although they do include sections which are about variations of human experience, and that's definitely what this book is as well. And I just read it recently with my online book club, and there were very different opinions about this book and reactions to it, where some people found it really engaging and interesting and stimulating in all of the philosophical ideas that it discusses, and then there were other readers that were really put off by it and found it frustrating, and some stopped reading it as well. Although I think those are kind of the best books to discuss in book clubs too, when you get a whole wide range of opinions. So I want to discuss my experience of this book and thoughts about it, but also offer some advice of anyone that wants to go into reading it, which I wish I had known before I started reading this book. So firstly, there's don't expect a kind of traditional novel in this way, but also don't give in to the impulse which I have as a reader when I read a book that is structured and composed in a way which is really different like this, that it can feel like a puzzle that's composed of many different pieces, because there are lots of different sections. They're not told in a chronological order. So when I come across a book that is structured in this radically different way, I see it as like, oh, I need to connect how it all fits together and try to construct a total picture to understand what is going on. And something I really love that some members of my book club did was challenge this idea when I said I wanted to go back and reread this to see if I could create a complete picture of what is happening in this book. I don't think that's what the author is intended. I mean, I don't think if it's even really possible, or might not be possible, because I'm not sure it does all entirely fit together in terms of the information that we are given, or that you could, create a chronological timeline or a kind of complete picture in this way, and I think that's not really the point of reading it, or what we should take away from this experience. And so letting go of that sense of wanting to create this sense of control or overall understanding really helped me enjoy and engage with this book in a much more productive way than if I had tried to do that all the way throughout, because I did try to do that when I started reading this, and I was going through different sections, and I was like, oh, I can see some connections here. There are certain character names that recur, and so wanted to start creating a kind of map like this. But I quickly gave up on that because it was so difficult to do, and I'm really glad that I did so. So if you go into reading this book, if you haven't haven't read it yet, I would really encourage you to let go of that sense of trying to do this, because there are so many delightful surprises in this, and really interesting ideas that are proposed by this book. But also it is frequently disorientating, or continuously disorientating, because throughout the entire experience of reading the book, I felt like the ground beneath my feet was constantly shifting. So what is this book actually about? If you've not read it yet, I should try to explain or expand a bit more on that like initial description that I gave. So we follow a number of different characters and different sections of this book who are in a particular place and time and a member of a certain community, but these are environments and a society that is structured in a way which is very different from what we are used to and aware of, and so each narrator that is introduced in different sections are partly explaining the structure of the society around them, but they are also individuals who are struggling with their own issues and ways of being human in this radically altered society. And this isn't just set in the future or possibly the past, but it's set in different periods over a long span of time of not just hundreds of years, but thousands of years. And so it's much more concerned with the evolution and possible extinction of the human race over a long period of time, and measures that are taken to extend the survival of the human race. And oftentimes this means that there are certain evolutionary characteristics of the human race to do with the way that people mate and the way that the human race continues over a long period of time, but also the way in which technology is incorporated into our lives, and how AI comes to have a place in the continuation of the human race in this way. And it's so radical and interesting how the author discusses this, because this was originally published in Japanese in 2016. So and it's discussing a lot of things to do with AI that we are preoccupied with today in 2025. And a lot of popular discussions that are going on with concerns about AI and how that is being incorporated into our lives. So it feels almost like prophetic in the way that the author is discussing these issues to do with AI. But obviously this has been a long time coming, and the way in which our intelligence and sense of selves are kind of melded with an online life and with online information. This has been something which has been impacting us as humans for a long period of time. And so to see these different iterations of life throughout this long span of time is really challenging the sense of what it means to have an identity, what it means to have a community, what this does mean for the human intellect, but also with emotions and issues to do with romance and nurturing and motherhood, and so large issues like this, and how it touches upon these by tracing the experiences of these different individuals throughout the different sections is so fascinating in this way. And there are certain characters that, or at least I've thought at first were recurring, but then even though certain names recur throughout the stories, they might be the same person that was referred to in an earlier section of the book, or they might be a distant descendant of that individual, or someone that has been genetically cloned to be the same as that individual from the previous section, and still retains some memories from that previous generation or different iteration of that individual. So it's questioning what it means to be a person, what makes us and us individuals, and we see throughout these different sections how some of these individuals do express themselves creatively and impart their sense of individual identity, that they're expressive. There's one character in one section that just loves to dance and always expresses herself through dance and continuously does this. And then there are characters in other sections that will fall in love with each other, or at least mate with each other and have conjugal relations, even if that is outside of the parameters of what the overseeing government or watchers have prescribed for these individuals. And so we see this human experience, this individual experience, which kind of comes up through the cracks of this society, which has been really carefully ordered over this period of time. And I really enjoyed how it challenged my ideas of issues to do with individual identity and community in this way, but also the way that I conceive time, because when being in the present and dealing with the issues that are going on in our world at this present time, it's can be much more difficult to look at how these issues can be explored without seeing them outside of the context of our own particular circumstances. And so I found it really useful to consider this over a long period of time. But at the same time, this book does deliver some really exciting plot points, and that there are some quite shocking things that happen in this book, of certain actions that are taken, but also of the different iterations that human life takes over a period of time. So there are some humans that take on characteristics of being able to photosynthesize, that they have kind of green skin, that they can absorb energy through the light of the sun, and there are some characters that have like extra eyes, and it's interesting how over this long period of time that there are an acceptance of certain communities and iterations of human life that grow up over this period of time, and there are also intolerances about it of some characters that see these iterations of the forms of human as diverging so much from what is considered and accepted to be human, that they take an intolerant attitude towards them. And so then there is division, there's strife, and we follow the drama of that over a long period of time. And I also really enjoyed how this novel explores motherhood, because there are characters which are, for the bulk of the book, that are just referred to as the mothers. And we do eventually find out what form these mothers take. But I really enjoyed how they were just described as the mothers for a long period of time, because at first I found this like frustrating. I was like, well, who are these mothers? What are their identities? And it made me think of this other book that I read recently, the nonfiction book, Embers in the Hand by Eleanor Barraclough, which is looking at the history of the Vikings, but tries to look at the history of of this civilization, rather than through the famous figures and what is known of Viking warriors or leaders over a long period of time, and look much more at the community life and of the Vikings over a long period of time. And Eleanor Barraclough, as a historian, makes the point, which other historians have made as well, but this just happens to be a book that I read recently, of that so much of what we know about history are the famous figures, of people, that individuals that are told in stories that are passed down through the generations. But a lot of these famous figures, especially in Viking society, and the warriors and leaders that we know about, I mean, they wouldn't have been able to do what they did if it hadn't been for mothers and families and people that were supporting and nurturing and caring for them, and literally continuing the human race. And so we are often aware that there is a whole history of mothers and motherhood that we don't know anything about, because hasn't been recorded in history. And so I think Kawakami is slightly touching upon this when she describes throughout a bulk of the book that there are the mothers, but then but this when it's eventually revealed who the mothers are, then this sort of challenges our idea of what nurturing means. And also it serves as kind of like a counter story to how there are often narratives and books which take issue with mothers who aren't exactly nurturing, and cause a lot of issues in the lives of their children, and mothers can be stigmatized and blamed for a lot of things. But then there are mothers who probably, because they're going through issues of their own, negatively affect the upbringing of their children. And so I certainly don't want to stigmatize mothers in this way, but this is something that happens, and this is something that occurs often in novels. But what this book is presenting is almost counter to that in how it's describing the experience of motherhood. And I found that so fascinating to think about as what motherhood can take. And so yes, it does, especially towards the end of the book, there are the final two sections do explain a lot of what is going on in this book, and that is helpful and satisfying in a way, in terms of understanding overall what has just been happening in this book. But at the same time, I think it works to this book's detriment, and it is a slight criticism I have of the book and the structure that the author has chosen to take in relating this story and discussing these ideas, that in doing so, some of the narrators, has to really overtly explain what is going on. And so through a lot of the different sections, because these are individuals in a place and time that is often radically different from what has come before, whether that's in the future or the past, they have to explain a lot of how the society around them is composed and what form humans are taking. And sometimes this is explained kind of organically within the story of these particular sections, and sometimes the narrators I think go a bit too much into explaining, so that it feels kind of artificial in how I'm being told this detail, so I understand this information about this, but that doesn't feel organic to the character of what they would be sane. And so there's a section where there's a certain community where the individuals in that community don't have names. Instead, everyone is assigned a particular number, and that number is in relation to the people and the numbers that have come before them. And so the explanation of this came to feel a bit overworked, I think, to me, and especially the second to last section of this book that explains a lot of how what was going on in this book. I think it's a bit overt in how it explains all of these details, even though at the same time I did find it really satisfying to know about this, and to be able to understand it all a bit better, having felt so disorientated through the entire experience of reading this book. So it's a tricky book to know whether to recommend or not. I mean, I think if you enjoy books that challenge your idea, that deliver a real novel experience in this way of presenting time and characters and society in a way which will be disorientating for you, and then challenge your ideas of these things, then I think I think you might enjoy reading it, whereas other readers that want more of a traditional plot and characters that you can follow over a long period of time, then it'll probably be a lot more frustrating. And I know there are readers that are in between as well, that just don't feel that Kawakami was successful in how she delivered this experience, and in how she presented her characters and all of these different ideas. But personally, I found it really stimulating and exciting to follow this. But at the same time, yeah, I was frustrated by certain aspects of the construction and structure that this book took. But there are also certain haunting images that the author uses. And so early on in the book, it's mentioned a couple times, the image of a carousel and children going on this carousel. And this image came to feel really symbolic for me over the course of the book, in how we follow these different individuals who are really trying to orientate themselves in the society that they happen to have landed in. And so they are like individuals on a carousel. When the carousel stops, you don't really know where you're going to get off, and where they have ended up in this particular space and time. It's just down to chance, and really that's the experience of all of us as individuals throughout history, when and where we're born. That is just it's just a game of luck of where we end up, and it will determine so much about our lives, and whether we falter or whether we thrive in our lives. But also the carousel comes to feel like time itself, and human civilization, that it kind of goes around in these cycles and circles, and it just goes on, and there is a pleasing way in which this book has a kind of circular nature to it, and I really enjoyed how the final section of this book, and how it connects with the rest of the book, and so I found it incredibly imaginative, and I enjoyed how it challenged me as a reader in this way. So yeah, I thought this was a really positive experience overall. But this is the first book that I've read by Kawakami, and there's been a number of books that have been translated by her over time. So if you've read other of her work, I'd really love to know if this is kind of characteristic of her work overall, or is this a very different sort of book? Are there other books by Kawakami that you would recommend that I read, having appreciated this book? And I would also love to know if you are interested in reading this book now, and if you have read it, do let me know what you think in the comments below, if you felt it was a positive or negative experience, or if you had a mixed experience reading it, or if you had a different strategy from me in going to read this book. So thank you for listening to me talk about it, and I hope you're doing well, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.